everyone, this is Peter Gaday from ManageXValue.com. In this video, we are going to continue our discussions around how to operationalize risk quantification at scale for power and utility companies. Specifically, we focus on the question around how to measure the impact or how to measure the overall risk for the organization. It is important for power and utility companies because impact or risk is not just measured in financial terms, but in fact, there are two other typical areas of focus. One of them is reliability, the other one is health and safety. And of course, when we talk about health and safety, it's not just the employee health and safety, but public health and safety. Obviously, there have been some risk events in the past everywhere throughout the world, where power and utility companies, through their operations, unfortunately suffered some risk events that had public health and safety impact. So companies also started measuring their impact in those terms as well. Typically, they started using a methodology that they call multi-attribute value approach, which essentially goes back to a methodology that I in the past used as multi-attribute utility analysis, which is an excellent methodology to quantify things or areas that are really hard to quantify in financial terms in order to make trade-off decisions or capture strategic priorities for organizations and be able to prioritize things, not just on a non-financial basis, but considering the other areas as well. So what you see here in the power and utility demo environment of the ManageXValue risk quantification platform is within the current risk analysis, within the hierarchy dashboard, looking at the impact areas. And you see that there is the financial impact and non-financial impact. And when we talk about risk quantification and the multi-attribute value approach, it is very important to understand that it focuses on the impact of risks. So when we talk about impact, having financial impact and non-financial impact, and under non-financial or strategic impacts, you can see the loss of customer trust, decreased service experience. You could argue also that business partners are just another type of customers, so they could be under the overall loss of customer trust as well. But this focuses on the reliability measures. Of course, our clients can use their own or define their own hierarchy. So this is just an illustration here. And then there is also the health and safety, public health and safety, and employee health and safety, which really focuses on the health and safety measure of the multi-attribute value approach that is used by multiple power and utility companies. This is important to understand that this focuses on the impact, not the risk events themselves. So as you can see, under risk events, there are health and safety related risk events or even service disruption risk events. But when we talk about the multi-attribute value approach, that really focuses on the impact side. So to illustrate the point, if we just filter down to the service disruption related risk events and eliminate the zero ones, you can see that under the risk event hierarchy, we really have the focus on the gas services and electricity services. Everything is around outage. And when we switch back to the impact areas view, you can see that most of the impact essentially is within the decreased service customer experience for customers and for business partners as well. However, if we switch our focus on the risk event side to health and safety events, then again, from a risk events perspective, you can see like gas explosions, wildfire caused by grid or other physical accidents. Really, these are mainly public health and safety events primarily. However, when we have the impact areas, then you can see that beside the significant health and safety impact of these risk events, there are other indirect impacts like loss of service experience or reliability impact indirectly. Because of course, if there's a gas explosion or of a transmission line or distribution line, then there is going to be an outage as well in the region. So this is point number one, to make sure that when power and utility companies focus on measuring their risks and they reference multi-attribute value approach, that really should focus on the impact side, but what they should also understand what is the interaction and the difference between defining risk events and measuring their impact. Now, point number two that is important in this topic is that when you see this hierarchy and focusing on the impact, this really measures the overall expected annual exposure or potential loss for the overall business, quantified in monetary terms, in this case in dollar terms. However, often for companies, not just in power and utility sector, but in other sectors as well, where health and safety is a significant measure, there is a reasonable argument that companies don't want to measure risk in monetary terms because they don't want to put dollar numbers on people's lives or injuries. This is completely understandable, and in those situations, what typically happens in the multi-attribute value approach is that they define a so-called synthetic score that is a weighted average of the various impacts, and as a result, the risk is not measured in monetary terms, but some kind of score. And this is absolutely fine as long as you just focus on your current risk analysis, just like here. When we have the current risk analysis, you can still use synthetic scores and even prioritize your risk events. You can easily see, even if these were not monetary numbers, but a score, a synthetic score, the service disruption here is risk events are much larger than customer data events or intellectual property events and so on. So from that perspective, it doesn't really matter whether you use a synthetic score or monetary terms. The question becomes important, though, when companies start thinking about their risk mitigation plans, in other terms, their investments. We will cover investments in a future video for power and utility companies, but what you see here is just a list of various investments in this demo environment, and you see various metrics that can help organizations to prioritize these investments. So total risk mitigation quantifies the overall risk mitigation considering if the investment was executed properly or as planned. So it measures the overall risk mitigation over the useful life of the investment. And if you just focus on this measure, this can already help companies to really start prioritizing which investment mitigates the most amount of risk. And it doesn't really matter whether these values are in monetary term or any synthetic score. However, as soon as you start focusing on metrics like return on investment, or what I believe is the most valuable or useful metric is the excess value probability measure, and you can check a past video on this topic. As soon as you start focusing on these metrics, then the cost of the investment becomes a very important factor, because you compare the overall risk mitigation to the cost of the investment to get these metrics. In a typical organization, when it is a financial decision to prioritize investments, you want to really focus on return on investment or excess value probability based decisions in the prioritization. But if you use a synthetic score for the risk mitigation benefit and you compare it to the monetary cost of an investment, then these metrics become really meaningless. So this is the reason why I believe it is better overall to measure the overall impact and the overall risk for organizations in monetary terms, because as soon as we get to the question of how to prioritize the investments, then this trade-off decision becomes something that you cannot avoid. Even for power and utility companies, there are resource constraints, at least in the general rate case discussions. There are going to be negotiations around which investment could be funded by the general rate case, and then which are the investments that could not be funded. In order to really prove that the investment is a valuable one, then you should be able to compare the cost of the investment to the risk mitigation benefit of this investment. And the best way to measure it is using the same metrics, which is the monetary metric. So I hope this overview helped you to better understand that how power and utility companies can measure the risk in not just in financial terms, but in non-financial areas as well, such as reliability and health and safety. You also see that it is important to understand the interaction and the difference between measuring the impact versus the risk events or other areas when we talk about these multi-attribute value approaches for power and utility companies. And then lastly, why it is something to consider for power and utility companies to measure really the impact in quasi-dollar numbers or monetary terms, especially when they start focusing on prioritization of their investments in a resource-constrained environment. I hope you like this video, and if you have any questions or comments related to this topic, or if you would like to have any other topics discussed specifically for power and utility companies, we are making these series now, so leave your comments below and we will address them as they come in. Thank you very much.